Hello YouTube, it is your good friend TheMovieCuban, back after quite a long hiatus. But now that patch 2.4.2 has officially dropped for Diablo, I figured it would be a good time to come on and make a few build guides for some of the newer setups that I've been fooling around with since the patch dropped. And so the first one I wanted to talk about today is actually the build that I've been having the most fun with, and that is simply the Raiment generator monk. Because, as you guys know, I was a huge fan of the generator monk paired with Ina's a couple patches ago, and when they nerfed Fists of Thunder, I was kind of worried that we were never going to see a generator build again. But I am glad that this patch has pretty much obliterated my worries about that, because we not only have a really powerful setup now, but according to my sources, this particular build has already managed to get really up there in the GRs. I think I heard that this build's managed to at least break the 100 mark. So it's really powerful. I mean, my build's nowhere near that yet. Maybe I'm just a scrub that way. But I have noticed that I've been able to do the upper 60s with relatively little difficulty, and I've been working my way up on that, and we'll see how far we can go for that. But let's start out with a discussion on the gear. So obviously, in order to run this build, you're going to need the effects of the Raiment of 1,000 Storms 6-set bonus. We are going to pull this off through a combination of 5 pieces on our character and then a Ring of Royal Grandeur to give us that 6-piece bonus. And the reason we're doing this is because we are going to need a different shoulder piece, which I'll go into in a minute. Now, as usual, Ancients are king in this game. That's not going to change anytime soon. But if you don't have Ancient gear, like some of my pieces are not Ancient, just follow along so you have an idea of what items you're going to want. And then when you find Ancient versions, you can slowly start replacing your gear. So we're going to use the Raiment's gloves, helm, chest piece, pants, and boots. And as you can see here, I don't have an Ancient chest right now. I stupidly got rid of the Ancient chest that I had because I was running the Ancient shoulders for the Storm. And so I got rid of the chest piece and I was running, I think, Cinder Coat. But now that I don't need the shoulders, but I need the chest piece, I'm kind of kicking myself in the butt for that. But our shoulders, which is the reason we're not wearing the full 6 set, you're going to need Lefebvre's Soliloquy. Now, this is that shoulder that reduces damage taken for 5 seconds every time you use Cyclone Strike. And because we're going to be using Cyclone Strike quite a bit in this build, just to help like groove up enemies and whatever, this is a no-brainer when it comes to damage mitigation. These shoulders pair really nicely with our bracers, the spirit guards, which, as you know, they make it so that your spirit generators reduce damage taken for 3 seconds. So between your bracers here and your shoulders, you've got quite a bit of damage mitigation already. Now, I should probably take a minute to go over the bonuses of the set itself. So the 2-piece for Raiment makes it so that your spirit generators have 25% increased attack speed and 100% increased damage. The 4 set makes it so that Dashing Strike spends 75 spirit, but refunds a charge every time it does it. And your spirit generators for the 6 set bonus increase the weapon damage of Dashing Strike to 12,500% for 6 seconds, and Dashing Strike increases the damage of your spirit generators by 1,250% for 6 seconds. This is the bread and butter of the build, because you are going to be using your Dashing Strike to buff up your spirit generators, and vice versa, your spirit generators will then give your Dashing Strike, when it actually hits things, a decent amount of kick as well. So you're also going to be wanting to run the Endless Walk set, that is the Traveler's Pledge necklace and the Compass Rose ring, so that while you're moving, your damage is reduced up to 50%, and while standing still, your damage is increased by up to 100%. Which just gives us some additional damage mitigation while we're on the go, and also allows us to deal more damage while standing still, because we're going to be standing still quite a bit while we're throwing punches in this build. Oh, excuse me. For your belt, I've heard mixed reviews. You can either use the Witching Hour, like I'm using here, to just get that extra critical hit damage and whatnot, or you can go ahead and use a String of Ears if you're worried about survivability, because that does give you some protection against non-melee attacks, I believe. But for the most part, I'm just running the Witching Hour. Now, the weapons that you're going to want for this build are the same weapons you needed for the Ina's generator build. And those are the Shenlong's Spirit one-handed weapons. That is the Shenlong's Fist of Legend and the Shenlong's Relentless Assault, as you can see right here. I did luck out and managed to find ancient versions of each of these, so I'm quite happy about that. But Shenlong's makes it so that the damage of your spirit generators is increased by 1.5% for each point of spirit you have. When reaching maximum spirit, all damage you do is increased by 150%, but you no longer passively regenerate spirit, and 65 spirit is drained every second until you run out. The period of time in between when your spirit has filled up and when your spirit has emptied is what a lot of players have begun to refer to as the Shenlong window. And for this build in particular, you are focusing on trying to spend as much time in that Shenlong window as possible. So when you run out of spirit, you're trying really quickly to refill that spirit back up so that you get back in Shenlongs. Or me personally, while I've been playing, I work really hard to just keep myself in the Shenlong state while I have enemies around. And then while I don't have enemies around, I don't really care where my spirit's at. But yes. So for gems, you can see that I'm running all diamonds just to give me some added survivability, because you see my toughness isn't that great. And that's what I have noticed a bit about this build, is it can be pretty glass cannon. So do not let too big of things hit you too many times. I would not recommend that. But so put a diamond in your helm for cooldown reduction. That'll help for other skills that I'll talk about later. And then for our legendary gems, we are going to use Bane of the Trapped to increase damage against enemies under control impairing effects. And as you know, the Bane of the Trapped spark, or its secondary, sets off its primary ability, so that's pretty useful. Bane of the Stricken to just make it so that you can do more damage to that Rift Guardian over time, because those guys start getting a lot of health the higher you go up. Oh, excuse me. And then finally, we are using Simplicity Strength, because this increases the damage of all your primary skills, so basically all the generators you would use. And then for every hit with your primary ability, you gain 4% of your maximum health, which my health is 867,000, so 4% of that from every hit is nothing to sniff at. So yeah, we'll go over the skills next. Now, for your primary skill, the thing I liked about this particular setup is you're not really leashed into having to use a particular skill. I'm currently testing out Way of the 100 Fists, Fists of Fury, which is what Thang N on YouTube is currently trying out on his monk. I've noticed it's got pretty good hit potential, simply because of the ability to stack that additional 60% holy damage, but I don't think it's the greatest. I've also seen people hit with assimilation, but again, I'm not a huge fan of that. If I were going to honestly recommend the use of a skill, it would be Crippling Waves Mangle, the Fire Rune, or I've tested out Rising Tide, and it's certainly not going to get you like super high up in the greater rifts. But what I did notice while running this was that the amount of time that I was spending outside of the Shenlong window was significantly smaller, simply because of the additional spirit regen that the skill gives. So this is something to keep in mind. As for Deadly Reach or Fist of Thunder, there's really no skills left that honestly feel like they're worth my time. So I would say stick with either Way of the 100 Fists or Crippling Wave. Yeah. Our next skill is going to be Breath of Heaven infused with light. This is to just give you a little bit of healing, and it also makes it so that you get additional spirit from spirit generating attacks. So this is going to help you refill your spirit a lot faster than you would normally, and that's helpful because along with the Shenlong window, a lot of our attacks require spirit, like the Cyclone Strike and whatever, but I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going to use Mantra of Salvation Agility. This is just going to give you that additional dodge chance and resistance so that you're not quite as squishy. I have yet to see a build that uses a mantra other than this one that really does very well, and that's just, I assume, because of the rather glass cannon-y nature of the build. For Dashing Strike, I'd say it would be a toss-up between Radiance if you want that extra attack speed for pure damage reasons. If you're just trying to like milk as much damage out of the build as possible. But if you're a little more worried about being squishy, then I would use Blinding Speed for that additional dodge chance, which will help you stay alive a lot longer. And I'll probably even switch over to Blinding Speed once I start getting into the really high Greater Rift territory. We're running Cyclone Strike Implosion. We're running this for two reasons. One, so that we can get the advantages of Lefebvre's soliloquy, and then the other reason is so that we can group enemies together, because a lot of maps like to spread out enemies, and you're not going to be able to spend any decent amount of time in Shenlong's window, which means you're not going to do a significant amount of damage, and you're not going to be able to get through content quickly if you don't have some way of grouping the enemies together. And because we're running the soliloquy pauldrons as we are, it just seems like a really good way to kill two birds with one stone on that one. And then finally we're going to use Epiphany Desert Shroud, simply because of the additional spirit generation and damage reduction. And also being able to actually teleport to your enemies while in the form is pretty nice. So if you've got those annoying enemies who will like run away, then you can just teleport right after them and punch them in the schnoz. So I enjoy that greatly. Passive skill wise, we're going to go ahead and use Alacrity to increase our spirit generator's attack speed a little more. We're going to run Beacon of Etar to help us deal with all those cooldowns. We're going to run Harmony again to give us more elemental resistances so we're not quite as squishy. And then we're going to use Seize the Initiative so that every time we hit an enemy that's at basically full health, we get an attack speed buff, because this build is all about stacking attack speed from different sources. As you can see, my attack speed's been increased by 49%, and that's just with my gear. That doesn't count the, well, I believe that's gear and passive. It doesn't count the actual set bonus that you get from Raiment in that. So technically my attack speed will be even more when I'm actually in the thick of things. And for the Kanai cube, because this is also really important when talking about our attack speed, we're going to run the Flying Dragon in the cube. So this is just, you know, it's the good old Flying Dragon. Its effect hasn't changed. You get a chance to double your attack speed when attacking. What has happened though is they've more correctly calculated out the doubling of your attack speed. I know it used to be a really weird number in previous patches because they hadn't done the math quite right. But now, as you can see, when the Flying Dragon kicks in, my damage just automatically doubles. I go from 1.6 to 3.2 million easy. And that is the power of the Flying Dragon. And that procs way more often than you'd think. So there's also, we're going to use the Death Diggers, which will make it so that our primary skills deal 100% additional damage. This is just a real subtle way to help amp up our the damage for our generator, you know, going along with the whole thing. And then I am currently using a Unity in my ring, simply because I have an Enchantress that I also have a Unity on. I know a lot of you will be like, why aren't you using the Templar? Two reasons. First reason is the Enchantress gives me extra attack speed, which helps go towards that more complete offensive thing I've been going for lately. And the other thing is, sadly, my Templar on this character is not geared the best. So he is far from ready to be taken out in the battle with me. So as sad as that is, it's true. For Paragon points, you're going to want to maximize your spirit first and foremost. The more spirit you have, the more damage you're able to do. Max out your movement speed as well. I've got 10% on my boots, which means I only need 15% here in the Paragon points. And then just throw everything else into dexterity. Dexterity is really the only stat you need more of once you've filled out the other two in the core. For offensive, I would start out with attack speed, then do your critical hit chance and damage, and then focus on cooldown reduction. As always, you can pick and choose which one you want to focus on first. These are just my personal preferences and how I went about it. In the defense tab, start with resist all, then armor, life regen, and then area damage, life per hit. We don't really worry about resource cost reduction because we don't really use a lot of skills that have a cost to begin with, and we don't use the skills that we have with costs that frequently that we would need that. So just go for area damage, then life per hit, and then if you have the points to spare, focus on resource cost reduction and gold flame. And now, I suppose, for your viewing pleasure, we are going to go ahead and run a rank 68 Raider Rift, just so I can show you guys how this works. If you don't want to watch the gameplay, you can certainly go ahead and cancel out now, and I thank you for sticking with me and watching up till this point. For the rest of you, sit back and enjoy the gameplay. So, basically, you are going to want to dash and strike roughly every 6 seconds, because 6 seconds is how long you have for the Raiment set to do its buff before it wears off and you've got to refresh. And because of that, you're going to spend a lot of time, it'll feel like, dashing between enemies and whatever, but the damage does not lie. You do want to be careful of, like, status effects and shit like that. Oh, see, perfect example. Do not get mobbed by, oh, wow, that was cheap. I'm sorry, my game totally lagged right there. I know all of you were watching just like, look at this scrub, he died twice. If there's ever been a status or an affix I've hated throughout the history of this game, it has been the lasers. I don't mind poison so much. I can deal with the poison damage. It's just, when you get nailed by like 2 affixes at the same time, it's a real drag. But, yep, You hit Breath of Heaven every time your spirit is low, so that you can get that Shenlong back up into the damage range, so that you can just absolutely punch the snot out of your enemies. And make sure you Cyclone Strike now and then, so that you can keep up that damage mitigation, so you're not taking too hard of hits from enemies that frankly could kill you in a couple of shots if they really felt like it. If the game feels like being that much of an asshole. And then basically you just go around and punch everything till it dies. Um, it's very much like the Ina Spirit Generator build. The only difference being, of course, you don't have the Mystic Ally wipe, as I like to call it, because as a lot of you know, when you hit the Mystic Ally skill while using the Ina set, because you've got 10 of the Mystic Allies, their effects will just spam the board, and because of all the damage increase that you get because of those guys, through like the Unity passive and all that, you just absolutely melt face the instant you push that button. I seem to recall at one time referring to it as like the fuck you button, and I still feel like that's pretty accurate. But even with Ina's, I could not run a 68 the way that I am doing right now. Like, Ina's is great for defense and whatever, and it's still a really fun set, and I do still play Ina's in my off time. But when I want to push on the greater rifts, there's literally no question aside from which generator do I feel like using for the Raiment build. Like, it's kind of sad that this build has pretty much single-handedly taken over the monk meta, but it's so good. Like, it's super good. And compared to it, the other builds just feel like lackluster. They can only go so far, I suppose, is what you should take away from this. I mean, I, for the longest time, was complaining about how the Dashing Strike build got no love whatsoever. I know there were a couple times Blizzard tried to, like, retool it and whatever, but everything they did either felt like way too little, or in one instance it was just way too much. Like, the damage bonus was there, but it was still garbage. And I don't know how you... Oh, got trapped on the stairs. I don't know how you buff a set and make it worse than it was before you buffed it. But that was the case with this set a couple patches ago. So I'm really glad that they got their shit together on that. Oh, this is not good. Double elite pack, just what I did not need. Look out for the lasers! Look out! No! No! Oh my god, I'm just doing horrible today. I'm so sorry that you have to watch this, ladies and gentlemen. But, yeah. So I'm glad that this build finally got some tender loving care. Yeah, let's maybe lead these guys away from one another. Oh, and right into a dead end. Oh, I'm so scared. I'm so scared. It doesn't help that I'm lagging really hard right now. Everywhere I think is a safe zone, I get lagged out, and then I get killed. But that's okay. Because aside from making a fool of myself, this is for your education. So, my usual rotation is I'll pop Epiphany, I'll hit Cyclone Strike a couple times to group things together, and then I'll hit Dashing Strike before just hitting my generator and spamming that. I'll hit Cyclone Strike occasionally when I'm worried about... What was that? See, I hit Cyclone Strike to try and avoid those kinds of things. Right there. That is why I use Cyclone Strike. But... So... Epiphany, when you have it, particularly when you're fighting elites, or else they will just grape you. Use Cyclone Strike to get some density if your enemies are super spread out and whatever. And then just punch them till they die. Try also, if your follower is wearing an Oculus ring like mine is, try and position yourself inside of that circle so that you can get the benefits of that damage, because it is helpful. I have noticed the Oculus ring being very much a useful thing to have when it comes to stuff my follower wears. So, oh, perfect, shield pylon. Now I don't have to worry about getting owned for a minute. I can actually focus on finding the other edge of this dungeon. So I seem to have just gotten all sorts of turned around. Oh great, another elite pack. And I will say what I've noticed is I was doing a little more damage and a little more consistently when I was using the Mangle rune for Crippling Wave as opposed to Fists of Fury like I'm using now. But it's honestly such a negligible difference in the grand scheme of things that I'm super not worried about it. That was a huge mob right there. Oh my god, I love it. Did you see how they all just flew? They all just flew away as I punched their lights out. Oh, it's great. Oh, here's the Rift Guardian. What do I got this time? Oh no, it's a Raziel. But there, just like that. Honestly, once you get to the Rift Guardian, you've reached the easy part. But I should have done way better on that. I have no excuse for why I was that shitty. But there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is basically what we're doing with the Raiment 6-piece generator set. or generator build rather. As you can see, it's pretty powerful. We just went through a 68. I'd like to say with relatively little difficulty, but I would be a dirty liar, and I do not like lying. But I seem to be lagging horrifically right now, and I do apologize for that. There. So, I hope you enjoyed the guide and my rambling. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. I do check that quite religiously, and I will be more than happy to answer any questions you have if I know the answers to those questions. But other than that, I would like to thank you guys for watching the channel once again. Your guys' views are greatly appreciated, and your continued support helps keep me in my nice little apartment. So, keep your eyes peeled for some more build guides from me here in the future, because I will be doing probably a few more in the coming days. And happy hunting, guys. TheMovieCuban out.